Hey, thanks for listening to another episode of the Fat Guy Podcast. I am the Fat Guy. Most people call me Brett Mason, and I'm so happy that you have decided to listen. And whether you're just beginning a weight loss journey, or perhaps you are disgusted and fed up and hopeless at trying everything, and you've heard about this keto and you've read about my success, I hope that I'm able to help you. Disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I've never had 1 minute of medical training, and anything health medical related, you should always consult with a qualified medical professional. The only thing I would say about that is if you do talk to your doctor and they are not keen on a ketogenic diet, or they tell you it's going to cause horrible things to happen, I would find me a new doctor. That being said, that's decisions you'll have to make for yourself. As of this morning, I hit 112 pounds lost, and I feel better than I've felt since the 90s, probably. It's pretty remarkable. A ketogenic diet has literally turned my life around in so many ways, and that's why I'm such a ketogenic diet evangelist, I guess you would say. So, in its simplest form, a ketogenic diet is basically a whole food diet that's comprised of a lot of fat. So think of it like this. If it was food your great-great-grandparents would have eaten with no technology and no industrialized farming, it's probably basically what you'll be eating. The exceptions to that would be your great-great-great-grandparents probably may have grown potatoes or carrots. And they might have enjoyed apples and bananas and pineapple, probably in limited quantities, though, especially that many generations ago. That would not have been something they would have eaten a lot of. So with the exceptions of that, which you can readily get at any grocery store now, it's pretty similar to what your great or great-great-grandparents would probably have eaten. So your goal is to eat real food. This is in the form of and food that has been grown in a natural way. So, for example, you're eating beef. You want to eat beef that comes from cattle that is grass fed, not grain fed. Cattle have never been designed to be grain fed. That is a new modern invention. And if you look at aerial photos of grain feedlots, it's just deadness. It's just brown, acres and acres of brown nothingness of cattle standing around eating grain. And then if you see aerial shots of grass fed cattle, it's cattle feeding on grass like the good Lord intended. And you may think there's not much difference in that, but there is. A cow is designed to eat grass and those type foods. So, and if you compare grass-fed butter to regular, modern butter that comes from grain-fed animals, or you compare grass-fed steak or grass-fed hamburger meat to meat that's from cattle that are fed on grains, there's considerable difference in the nutrient makeup. Some of those are rather huge. I would probably say the most important, well, there's several important ones, but I'd say one of them definitely is omega-3s. I think grass-fed beef, don't quote me on this, I'm just ballparking it off the top of my head, but I believe grass-fed beef has 3 to 5 times as much omega-3s as grain-fed does. And that's really huge, along with other things, other aspects of grain-fed, or grass-fed rather, that help reduce this inflammation problem, which contributes to all kinds of disease as well as obesity. So in its simplistic form, that's what it is. In its technical form, it is eating 20 carbs or less of, 20 grams or less of carbohydrates a day. And then what is left, you want to make the majority of that be fat. So at least 50-50 fat or more. So one of the best examples I can use is use MyFitnessPal to track your food. It's free and it's easy, and you're like, oh, it's such a chore. Well, the first few days it will be, but most people eat the same things over and over again. After you use MyFitnessPal for a week or 2 weeks, most everything you eat will be right there because you've just recently used it, and it's just a snap and a breeze to do. But here's what a decent day of MyFitnessPal would look. Now, the numbers will vary for you depending on how much you eat, but the ratios is what I'm talking about. So for everybody, no matter who you are, around 20 grams of carbohydrates is your max. If you hit 21 one day, fine. You hit 18 or 19 one day, even better. Try to keep it at 20 though. So there's 20 grams of what you eat is carbohydrates. And then the rest of what you eat is going to be fat and protein. These are called macronutrients: carbs, fat, and protein. So when you look in the nutrient section of MyFitnessPal, you want the fat grams to be equal to or higher than the protein grams. So let's say you ate 65 grams of protein. Then you want to have at least have eaten 65 grams of fat. Probably a few more grams. So 65 protein and 65 fat would be good. 65 protein and 75 fat would be good. 65 protein and 85 fat would be good. But you at least want them to be equal or higher, or the fat to be equal to the protein or higher. And if you'll stick with that, you're pretty much going to be on a ketogenic diet. Okay? So now that we've laid out the basics of what a ketogenic diet is, I'm going to talk about the importance of electrolytes. And here's why electrolytes are especially important for people on a ketogenic diet. So first of all, what are electrolytes? Electrolytes are salt, magnesium, potassium, calcium to an extent. These are salts. Potassium is a salt. Magnesium is a salt. If you buy just pure raw potassium and taste it, it's salty. As a matter of fact, if you buy light salt is sodium, half potassium, because it decreases the saltiness. So these salts do a lot of things in the body. I'm not going to get into everything they do, but just let me tell you this. They fuel the electrical connections in your body. So what runs off electrical? Everything runs off of electrical. Your body is an electrical being. You have little synapses firing all the time. Electrolytes facilitate that to a great extent, whether it be, neurons in the brain and things of that nature, or whether it be the electrical conductivity of the heart that causes that heart to continue to fire. So you want electrolytes. Electrolytes are not bad. Salt is not bad. Now, if you already have high blood pressure, you may have issues with salt. Again, I would have to tell you to consult with your physician, but I'll tell you this. When you move from a carbohydrate-based diet, which is sugar, make no mistake, carbs are sugar. Sugar are carbs. There is no difference. A carb is a sugar. A sugar is a carb. The sooner you understand that, the further along you'll be to understanding how to eat healthy. Your body uses a few things, water and electrolytes, in relation to carbohydrates. So I can tell you a pretty close ratio for water. I don't know as accurately or as definitively about electrolytes, but I can tell you of a certainty that for every gram of carbohydrate that's stored in your muscle or in your liver or whatever, your body retains about 3.9 grams of water to suspend it. So that's why weight loss happens so rapidly when you cut carbs from your diet. Your body doesn't need that excess water anymore to suspend the carbs, and you clear the carbs out and the water follows right behind. And this is why people frequently lose 8, 10, 12, 15 pounds the first 7 to 10 days they're on this diet. Much of it is water. Some of it is fat. So a lot of people throw up red flags about that right away and go, oh, well, it's just water loss. Water loss doesn't mean anything. Well, if you're hauling around 15 pounds of water that you don't need, I can promise you 15 pounds of water loss is a good thing. Fat loss follows because of the metabolic nature of a ketogenic diet, but that's, again, not something I'm going to get into on this podcast. So as your body releases all this water, it begins to release a bunch of these electrolytes. So you start losing the sodium, losing the potassium, losing the magnesium, and to a degree losing calcium. when your kidneys aren't constantly having to hold on to or flush or deal with so much retention of water and other issues, you get this release of electrolytes. And if you are on a ketogenic diet, it's very, very important that you get your electrolytes. So let's start with the simplest, and that would be salt or sodium, okay? You got to get the sodium in. Now, for a person on a ketogenic diet, about the minimum amount of grams of sodium you'd want to get a day is, 4 or 5. That's a lot. I take a sodium tablet supplement every day. So I take 1 gram of sodium, and added to the sodium that I get in my food every day, usually adds up to 4 or 5 grams. Okay. Potassium is something that you just really don't want to supplement with too much, because you can easily overdose on potassium. It's very hard to find a potassium supplement that has more than 99 milligrams of potassium, which is a very small amount, because you can OD on it. Now, I do and often do take potassium supplements, but I don't necessarily advise it for everybody. I would say make sure that you aren't getting a ton of potassium from your food if you're going to supplement. That being said, food is the best way to get it, and potassium-rich sources of food are your greens, etc. So your spinach and your mustard and your collards and your turnip greens, etc. I guess kale to an extent or whatever. So that's one of the best ways to get potassium. So you want to get that potassium. If you fall short in those areas, and I wouldn't want to fall too short in them because you need those type foods, perhaps you may want to take a potassium supplement. I'll reiterate again, consult with your doctor. Magnesium, a less dangerous supplement to take. You can do it much more liberally without too many concerns, is magnesium. And, how much do you need? That's hard to say. I do 400 milligrams of magnesium a day, and I will miss some days, but as a general rule, I have it right with my sodium tablet, and I like to keep those electrolytes up. Calcium, I tend to monitor. I like to monitor my calcium in my FitnessPal and make sure I'm close, and at the end of the week, if I don't feel like I got enough calcium that week, I may supplement with some calcium. What calcium is best? Boy, is that an answer that it's hard to find. Everybody seems to disagree. I have found that I mix it up, so I'll do different kinds of calcium from time to time. Coral calcium I've used. That has been, a lot of people say that there was too much hype and BS around coral calcium. I like coral calcium, and believe it or not, I actually have felt positive physical changes from coral calcium that I have not felt from other calciums. So I don't necessarily know how it's like for everybody, but I do think for me, coral calcium may be the best calcium. Nevertheless, again, calcium in foods can come from a lot of those green things we mentioned earlier. And so what you really want to do is just monitor your calcium and make sure. So all these things work synergistically together. Your calcium and vitamin D works together with, magnesium and the potassium. They all work in there together. So it's not just one or the other. You want to keep them all up. It's very important, though. So when you start a ketogenic diet, here's why especially your electrolytes are important when you start a ketogenic diet. When you lose all that water that first week to 10 days and you lose all those electrolytes, you are not going to feel good with no electrolytes. You're going to feel horrible. And it's nicknamed keto flu. No, it's not the flu, but they call it keto flu. And the symptoms are lethargy, lack of energy, headaches, muscle aches. You can get muscle cramping. All these things from lack of sodium, potassium, magnesium, etc. So the way you prevent getting keto flu is, if you're going to go on a ketogenic diet, go ahead and get these supplements and go ahead and start taking them from the very first day. So you'll never become depleted and you'll never experience keto flu at all. And if for some reason you do, it will be so minimal, you'll hardly notice it, okay? I have friends on a ketogenic diet who don't worry with magnesium or potassium at all. All they care about is the sodium. And they'll do things like in the morning, they'll have a warm glass of water with salt in it, and they'll do a tablespoon of salt or whatever. It's also it also motivates the bowels. So I have one friend in particular. She's fantastic, and she gets up in the morning and she just does the salt water, and within 15 or 20 minutes, she has a bowel movement. She gets flushed out, and she knows she's gotten her some sodium in, and that's how she chooses to deal with it. So there is no right or wrong way to make sure you get your electrolytes. You just need to make sure you get them. So I'd say after you've been on a ketogenic diet for a while, 3 or 4 weeks, and your body's had time to reacclimate and reach a new equilibrium, that your electrolytes will start to balance out a fair amount. And at that point, it's just kind of a maintenance thing. For me, I still definitely take the sodium pill every day because I'm a big believer in the sodium. I will take magnesium every day or almost every day. Potassium I'll take rarely, if ever. And calcium, again, I just kind of track my calcium and see how it's going. So the one thing that I would say is the other form of electrolytes you can get, which is just in a very small amounts, is with Powerade Zero. So Powerade makes a 0 carb, 0 sugar version of Powerade, and it has magnesium and it has sodium, and I believe it has a trace amount of potassium in it. And it may even have some calcium in it. I'm not sure, but nevertheless, you can down a bottle of that a day, and you're gonna hit a little bit of electrolytes. It's not a ton of electrolytes in there though, so it's not going to help you in acute situations like to prevent the keto flu. There's not enough in that Powerade to prevent keto flu. You're going to need to supplement. Take the 1 gram of sodium a day, take the 400 milligrams of magnesium, and take a 99 milligram potassium pill every day. Okay. But after that, after you've been in, then those are fine to have, especially on days where you're sweating or anything like that and losing extra electrolytes. Electrolytes are very important though. So I'll leave you with this on some research. There's a lot of research on a couple of things. People experience hunger, like really genuine feeling hunger in a couple of instances when they're just not hungry. And obviously we all know about boredom hunger. We know about cravings hunger, all these kind of things. But you can also feel incredibly hungry when you're just thirsty. If your body just needs water, you can feel hungry. It'll feel like hunger. So sometimes if you feel hungry, you may want to have yourself 8 ounces of water and see what happens in 5 minutes. It should go away if it was needing water. The other thing that can happen is you can feel hungry or run down or tired when your electrolytes are down. So you will always want to keep those electrolytes up where they need to be. So again, that's your sodium, magnesium, potassium, and to some degree calcium. So these things are all very important. If you plan your meals right and you try to eat really good food and you're getting high quality grass-fed beef, and steaks and things like that, and you're getting some high quality green leafy vegetables and the spinach and the broccoli and the cauliflower and the asparagus in there, and you're working all that in, and you're keeping your carbs at 20, and you're getting a wide range of really good foods like that, you're probably going to keep most of your electrolytes where they need to be, with maybe the exception of sodium. So you just got to make a concerted effort to make sure. And MyFitnessPal tracks sodium, so you can see every day how much sodium you've eaten. It may not be 100% accurate, but it'll give you a really good gauge. And if your sodium's coming in at 1,000 milligrams, which is a gram a day, that's real low. You need to get it up to 3, 4, or 5. If it's coming in at 2, that's real low. You need to get up to 3, 4, or 5. I'd say ultimately 4 or 5 is the range you really want to be in. And again, that's from, I believe it's a 3-country study of heart incidents of heart events, cardiac arrest, etc., as related to daily consumption of sodium. And what they found was the least amount of heart events happened right around the 4 to 5 gram mark of sodium a day. And when you got down less than that, cardiac events increased, and when you got higher than that, cardiac events increased. So the national recommendations in America, the USRDA for sodium, I believe is 2.3 grams or 2,300 milligrams, which is about half, a little less than half, or around half of what this research actually shows you should be getting. So these are all things to consider seriously. Do your own research, and most importantly, consult with your doctor. I can tell you, though, a ketogenic diet is the way to lose weight for 99% of people. There's just a small fraction of people that may have a medical condition that prevents them from doing keto, but 99 point whatever percent of the population, it's by far the best. And I would say, especially if you've been chronically overweight. If you've been overweight since childhood, you have metabolic syndrome. Keto is the way to go. If you've been overweight for more than a couple of years, you definitely have metabolic syndrome. There are a few people who get overweight because they got in an accident and they couldn't move anymore and they got depressed, and so they weren't moving and they were eating because of depression that didn't really have anything to do with metabolic syndrome. There's some instances of women who gained weight with a baby, and they didn't lose it back, and they've had it for 2 or 3 years. Maybe metabolic syndrome hasn't set in for them, and they could use various different types of weight loss. Keto would still work for them, but I'm saying just because of the food restrictive nature of it. The beautiful thing about keto is it keeps you from eating. You become so satisfied. You become so satiated from the fat. Fat is such a satisfying, satiating thing that you're just never hungry. You just stop eating as much, and your hunger automatically regulates itself. And so that's one of a main two-part reason that keto works so well. The other part is obviously what happens inside. It's the stopping of the sugar. It's allowing the insulin to drop, which when the insulin drops, it allows the body to release fat as fuel. So that's internally what's happening. But mentally, hunger-wise, which is what most people deal with when they try to calorie restrict, is this overwhelming hunger, this need to eat that's uncontrollable. And this is why people fail on diets. They're like, oh, if I eat 1,500 calories a week, I'll lose weight. Well, they can do that, whatever their number is. Some people do 1,200, some people do 1,300 a day, some people do 1,400 a day, some people do 1,500 a day. The first week they get by, second week maybe, third week it gets harder, fourth week it gets even harder. Your body starts pushing back against that because your body is revolting against that. Because your body isn't accessing your fat stores to make up the difference, which is what you want it to do because your insulin is staying high. So you're restricting the calories, but the carbs are staying high. And so the body isn't releasing the fat stores for energy, so your body still wants energy. And your body will eventually win. Your body's main goal is to stay alive. I watched this with the passing of my mother from ovarian cancer. Her body fought to live to the last breath. It fought to live. Your body will override your brain and your will to live. And with a ketogenic diet, your brain works with your body. Your body's satisfied, it's satiated, the hunger and stuff goes away. You're rarely hungry, and if you do get hungry, it's not a ravenous hunger. It's a mild tugging hunger that's normal and easily to deal with. And, it's just a big difference. It's just a big, big difference. So I know we covered a lot of things on today's podcast, but I primarily wanted to talk about the importance of electrolytes. They're very, very important. Your early success on a ketogenic diet could come down to electrolytes. I know several people that have failed because they got keto flu in spite of me telling them to up their salt, despite me telling them that they could make the headache go away if they would drink a glass of warm salt water. So that's what I did. I didn't take the electrolytes from the beginning. I was like, yeah, whatever. It was like day 4. I had this fatigue. I was irritable. My head was killing me, and it went on for hours. And I finally said, you know what? I'm going to try that salt thing. So I went, got me some water. I didn't heat my water. I just kept it cool. I put me a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons, I don't remember, of salt in there. And I mixed it up really, really good. And I drank it, and literally within 30 minutes, I felt amazing. The fatigue went away. The grumpiness went away. The headache went away. And I was like, wow, okay, maybe there's something else to this maybe there's something to this electrolyte thing. So I immediately made plans to buy sodium tablets, magnesium tablets, potassium, and all this stuff, and I've never doubted it since. And so they're very important. I hope today's podcast helped you. If there's some way I can help you, you can shoot me a message on all forms of social media. You can find me by looking for Fat Guy Podcast. This includes Snapchat. I am Fat Guy Podcast on Snapchat, and I share every meal or nearly every meal I eat, so you can see what I eat in a day. I know a lot of people that's helped a lot. Matter of fact, I had a friend of mine the other day. It was like, I keep considering this keto diet, but it seems so hard. But then I look at your Snapchat, and you're always eating food that looks good. And I'm like, yeah, the food is good. It's fine. You love the food. It's not a problem. So add me on all the social medias, okay? And you can shoot me a message. The easiest one would be via either Facebook or Instagram. Those are the two that I prefer. Shoot me a message on there. Add me, and I'll try to help you if I can. Thanks for listening, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Apple Podcast, or the Google Play Store. And we'll talk to you next time.